Jesus' message is an anti-intellectual one, designed precisely to combat this type of overgrowth of reason in religious life. Quote to you, Rousseau. Jesus Christ did not entrust his doctrine and ministry to scholars. There's not a single learned or scientific word to be found, lest it be to indicate his contempt for everything of that kind. After the death of Jesus Christ, 12 poor fishermen and artisans undertook to instruct and convert the world. Their method was simple. They preached artlessly, but with utter conviction. And of all the miracles with which God honored their faith, the most striking was the saintliness of their lives. The Pharisees are like the Athenians. They got a lot to say. They have a huge system of law to tell you what to do. Christ and his disciples are like the Spartans. They don't have a lot to say. And when they convince you, it's not through flashy rhetoric. It's through being moral exemplars. So early Christianity, for Rousseau, just like early Judaism, started off ignorant but virtuous. But then, reason reared its ugly head again with the introduction of Greek philosophy. I quote to you, Rousseau. Scholars constantly wanted to prove themselves cleverer than their predecessors. Every dogma became an occasion for hair-splitting. Everyone wanted to uphold his opinion. No one wanted to yield. The ambition to be the leader of a sect arose. Heresies proliferated on all sides. Now pay attention here to why Rousseau said people started hair-splitting. It wasn't because making distinctions was important for living a good and virtuous Christian life. It was because of contrarianism, that they wanted to defend uncommon positions, to stand out. So that's the psychological origin of the heresies for Rousseau. And that's how the early church got corrupted. And if you take a history of philosophy class, there's usually a 1,000-year gap between Augustine and Aquinas. And we usually go, Dark Ages, no philosophy, bad. But Rousseau goes, Dark Ages, no philosophy, great. Because even though Enlightenment leaving Europe did not uncorrupt the church, once you're corrupted, you're corrupted, it at least gave the church some peace. This peace was broken for Rousseau by the Renaissance of the 14th century and something even more destructive, the printing press in the 15th century. The printing press allowed the Bible to be in the hands of not just the scholars, but also the people. Division, contrarianism, and heresy became democratized. The Protestant Reformation soon followed in the 16th century, and its central principle of sola scriptura, right, through scripture alone instead of relying on worldly authority or tradition, became a recipe for division. In the first 1,500 years, the church had one great schism, the Catholics and the Orthodox. How many denominations of Protestantism are there in the first 500 years? Numerous as the stars, each with their theological hot take. This is why, when my Catholic friends make fun of my Protestant friends, they call them book worshippers. And eventually Rousseau thinks that starting a sect was no longer cool enough. It wasn't contrarian enough, that you had to become an atheist. So even atheism is a contrarian impulse. Now the story of religion and reason for Rousseau is exactly the same as the story of civilization and reason, which is that reason causes division and chaos within a community because it leads this centrifugal force of trying to distance oneself. So whether that's Jewish legalism straying from God, Greek philosophy and the early heresies, or the printing press and the Protestant Reformation. Now the reason Rousseau thinks this centrifugal force of contrarianism is so dangerous is because what makes a community is shared identity. It's shared values, it's common beliefs. It's the fact that we worship the same God. It's the fact that we speak the same language, that we have the same heroes. This foundational similarity is what is going to enable you to identify with your fellow citizens, to see your fellow citizens as in some strong sense me. In a diverse society like our own, Rousseau thinks at best we are elementary particles joined together by a thin wire of self-interest or legal force. I only help you insofar as it's going to profit me or I'm obliged to by the law. Philosophy and science, then, are going to be lethal to this social fabric, but not just because of contrarianism. even rational inquiry itself, even philosophical inquiry, is deeply damaging to this set of shared identities. Why? Well, it's because there are a lot of false beliefs that also formed our shared identity. So, in other words, Rousseau is going to distinguish the usefulness of a belief from its truthfulness. There are a lot of false beliefs that also form a shared common identity. I think everyone will agree here that the Egyptian gods never existed. But I think we can also all agree that it would have been terrible if at the height of Egyptian civilization, half of them turned atheists. In Rousseau's case, he's going to point out a story with Cicero and Caesar. So Cicero berates Caesar for publicly denouncing the immortality of the soul, because Cicero thinks it's an important axiom of moral and political life. But Cicero expresses the same opinion, but just in private. And Rousseau praises Cicero. He doesn't think this is hypocritical because Cicero did it to protect the state, not for his own sake. So the lesson here is that there are many wrong beliefs that are nonetheless helpful for a community that would be threatened by this type of rational inquiry. But most of our shared identities are not like that. They're not just straight up wrong, like the Egyptian gods, and we can give good reasons for them. But even these things, it's very dangerous to subject them to rational inquiry. Why is that? Just because you can give reasons for something does not mean it is grounded on reason. So why marriage? Why have children? Well, there are many reasons we can give both for and against that. But that doesn't mean it's grounded in a sort of deductive, QED, rational certainty. Furthermore, a lot of our shared identities are just completely arbitrary, like the color of the flag. So when you start opening these things up to rational inquiry, like why white, red, and blue? Why should we have children? Why should we get married? You're going to open yourself up to many vectors of valid attack. And Rousseau thinks that in the realm of ideas, attack is going to always be easier than defense.